Winter, 1873. The Dakota Territory lies buried under 3 feet of snow as temperatures plummet to deadly levels. Inside a modest cabin, Sarah Miller tends the fire while her daughter Emma plays with wooden dolls on the floor. Outside, a half-frozen Apache man stumbles through the blizzard, his strength fading with each step. Pride keeps him from seeking shelter with white settlers. Hatred makes him prefer death to their charity. As consciousness slips away, he collapses near the cabin's woodpile. The snow begins to cover him like a cold shroud when the cabin door creaks open. Little Emma steps out barefoot, her breath visible in the frigid air. She tilts her head, studying the strange man with curious eyes. What could possibly unite these 3 souls from worlds so far apart? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Sarah Miller twisted the gold band on her finger as she stared out the frosted window. 2 years a widow, yet she couldn't bring herself to remove Robert's ring. The band had grown loose as the hard prairie life stripped away her softness, but it remained her anchor to a happier past. "Mama, look, Martha wants to have tea with us." Emma held up a handmade doll with button eyes and yarn hair, its cloth face smudged from constant handling. Sarah smiled despite her weariness. "Well, we shouldn't keep Martha waiting, should we?" At 6 years old, Emma remained untouched by the bitterness that sometimes threatened to overtake her mother. Born with her father's optimism and her mother's stubborn streak, the girl approached life on the frontier with an unshakable sense of wonder. Robert had been gone since the winter of '71, caught in a sudden blizzard while returning from town with supplies. By the time neighbors found him, the cold had done its work. Sarah was left alone with a 4-year-old daughter, a remote cabin, and the constant struggle of frontier life. The neighbors had suggested, with increasing frequency, that a woman alone couldn't manage. The Wilsons had offered to buy the homestead at a fair price, while the widow Peterson had unsubtle mentioned her unmarried son. Sarah had refused them all, her spine stiffening with each suggestion that she couldn't survive without a man. "We don't need anyone but each other, do we, Emma?" Sarah murmured, watching her daughter arrange a tea party with pine cones serving as guests. "And Martha," Emma added seriously. "And maybe a dog someday?" Papa promised. Sarah swallowed hard. Maybe someday. She turned back to the stove where a pot of stew simmered. Barely enough vegetables left, but she'd stretched them with the last of the salted venison. The root cellar was getting bare, and the winter had barely begun. Tomorrow she'd check the rabbit snares again. The rifle hung above the door. Robert had taught her to shoot, and she'd become a better marksman than him, though he'd never admitted it. Pride had been Robert's weakness, but it had become Sarah's strength. Pride kept her working when her muscles screamed for rest. Pride kept her chin up when she rode into town, ignoring whispers that followed her. Pride would get them through this winter, just as it had the last. Outside, the wind howled with increasing fury. Sarah added another log to the fire and consulted Robert's journal, where he'd meticulously recorded weather patterns for 5 years. His neat handwriting noted that storms this early often lasted the longest. They might be snowbound for days. "Mama, tell me the story about the Apache princess," Emma said, abandoning her tea party to curl up near the fire. Sarah hesitated. Emma's fascination with the native peoples worried her sometimes. Unlike many settlers who spoke of Indians with fear and hatred, Robert had insisted on respect. He'd traded fairly with the local tribes and learned enough of their language to communicate. Still, Sarah had grown up hearing stories of savage attacks, scalped settlers, and stolen children. "Not tonight, Emma. It's time to check our supplies." Reality was what mattered now, counting jars of preserved food, measuring flour and coffee, ensuring they had enough lamp oil and candles. Romance and fairy tales wouldn't keep them alive through a Dakota winter. As Sarah inventoried their provisions, Emma pressed her face to the window, her breath creating a small circle of fog on the glass. "The snow angels are dancing," she whispered, watching the swirling patterns of white against the darkening sky. Sarah paused, momentarily seeing the storm through her daughter's eyes. Not as a threat, but as something magical. Robert had had that gift too, finding beauty in the harshest landscape. Sometimes she feared that quality had died with him, leaving only practicality and determination in its place. The wind suddenly intensified, rattling the cabin's sturdy logs. Emma jumped and ran to her mother, wrapping small arms around Sarah's waist. "Just the wind having a tantrum," Sarah reassured her, stroking the girl's blonde curls. "We're safe in here. Nothing can hurt us as long as we stay inside." Maka pulled the buffalo hide tighter around his shoulders as the wind cut through him like knives. In his 38 winters, he had never felt cold like this. His people would be sheltered in the protected valley to the south, their winter camp established before the first heavy snow. But Maka walked alone. His fingers found the small wooden horse in his medicine pouch, a talisman carved by his father when Maka was just a boy. Strong like the horse, wise like the owl, his father had said. Before the white settlers came, before the reservations, before everything changed. The horse was smooth from years of handling, its features worn to abstract curves. Like memory itself, Maka thought, time erases the details but leaves the essence. He should have stayed with the band, despite his disagreement with the new chief. Quiet Bear was young, angry, and hungry for war. When the army had broken yet another treaty, Quiet Bear had called for raids on settler homesteads. Maka had spoken against this in council. "I am a healer," he had reminded them. "My grandfather taught me that all life is sacred. The path of violence will lead only to more suffering for our people." The elders had nodded, remembering Maka's grandfather, a powerful medicine man respected by all. But the younger warriors had sided with Quiet Bear. "Your ways are old," Quiet Bear had declared. "The white man understands only force. We must show strength or perish." The argument had grown heated. Maka, as keeper of the healing ways, could not support attacks on families, even white families. When the council voted to raid, Maka had made his choice. "I will go north," he had announced, "to gather winter medicines and seek guidance from the spirits. When the snow melts, I will return." It was not a lie, but not the whole truth. He needed distance from Quiet Bear's rage and the coming violence. The spirits had always spoken more clearly to him in solitude. What he hadn't expected was the storm's ferocity. One day of snow had become 3, with no break in the clouds. Game had vanished, and his stores of pemmican were nearly gone. The landmarks he knew had disappeared under white drifts, leaving him disoriented in what had once been familiar territory. This morning he had found tracks, not animal, but the straight paths of white men's horses. Settlers or soldiers, it didn't matter. Neither would welcome a lone Apache. He had changed direction, moving away from the tracks, but the effort had cost him precious energy. As darkness approached, Maka knew he had made a grave error. His ancestors would say the spirits were testing him. Perhaps death in this white emptiness was his punishment for abandoning his people. The wind shifted, bringing a new scent, wood smoke. Somewhere ahead was shelter, a cabin perhaps. For a moment, hope flared in his chest, then died just as quickly. What settler would welcome an Apache to their fire? More likely they would shoot him on sight. Better to die with dignity than beg from those who had stolen his people's land. Yet his body betrayed him, turning toward the scent of smoke like a plant seeking sun. Through the curtain of snow, he glimpsed a faint yellow light, a window. A strange dizziness overtook him. The ground seemed to tilt beneath his feet. Maka stumbled, caught himself, then stumbled again. His grandfather's voice seemed to whisper from the wind. "Sometimes pride is the enemy of wisdom." The carved horse pressed against his palm as his legs finally gave way. He fell forward into the snow, the cold oddly comforting now. As consciousness began to fade, Mako's fingers clutched his medicine pouch, its contents: herbs, stones, the carved horse, the elements of healing. The irony did not escape him. A healer who could not heal himself. His last thought before darkness took him. The spirits had a strange sense of humor, bringing him to die at a white settler's doorstep. "Emma, stay where I can see you," Sarah called as her daughter pushed open the cabin door, a small wooden bucket in hand. The snow had tapered briefly, and they needed to restock the woodpile before the next wave hit. "Just getting snow for water, Mama," Emma replied, stepping carefully into the knee-deep whiteness. Her woolen stockings would be soaked in minutes, but the well was frozen solid, and melted snow was their only option. Sarah watched from the doorway, shivering as the cold air rushed in. Emma scooped snow into her bucket, humming to herself. Then suddenly, the girl stopped, her head tilting to one side. "Mama," she called, her voice curious rather than frightened. "There's a man sleeping in the snow." Sarah's heart lurched. "Emma, come back inside. Now." But Emma took another step forward instead. "I think he's cold." Sarah grabbed the rifle from above the door and hurried out, her skirts dragging in the snow. Just beyond their woodpile, a dark shape contrasted against the whiteness. Not moving, almost covered. "Emma, get back to the house." This time her tone brooked no argument. The girl retreated a few steps but didn't go inside. Sarah approached cautiously, rifle ready. The figure was a man, lying face down, one arm outstretched. Dark hair, copper skin, buckskin clothing. Indian. Sarah's finger tensed on the trigger. Stories rushed through her mind. Homesteads burned, families slaughtered. But Robert's voice seemed to whisper in her ear. "Fear makes monsters of men." The man wasn't moving, probably already dead. She should just go back inside, bar the door, and wait for the storm to bury him completely. Emma's small voice broke through her thoughts. "Is he sleeping, Mama?" Sarah swallowed hard. "No, Emma. I think he's very cold." "Like Papa got very cold?" The innocent question struck Sarah like a physical blow. Robert had frozen to death less than 5 miles from home. She'd always tortured herself with the thought of him alone in his final moments, praying for help that never came. Before she could answer, Emma darted forward with a child's impulsive compassion. "Sir?" she said, kneeling beside the still form. "Sir, you look cold." "Emma!" Sarah lunged forward, grabbing her daughter's arm. To her shock, the man's fingers twitched. He was alive. Emma looked up at her mother, eyes wide with concern. "He needs to come inside, Mama. Like you always say, nobody should be out in a storm." Sarah's mind raced. An Apache. In her home. Near her child. Every instinct screamed danger. Then Emma said the words that would change everything. "You look cold, sir? Want to warm up with my mom?" The rifle wavered in Sarah's hands. The man's eyes had opened slightly dark, confused, but aware. He made no move to rise, perhaps too weak, perhaps simply waiting for the inevitable bullet. In that suspended moment, Sarah saw not a threat but a human being. Someone's son, perhaps someone's father. What would she want another woman to do if it were Robert lying in the snow? "Help me get him inside," she said finally, lowering the rifle. "Take his other arm." Emma beamed as if she'd been given a present. Together they half-dragged, half-carried the semi-conscious man into the cabin. He was lighter than Sarah expected, starved perhaps or simply frozen to the bone. His skin felt like ice, his breathing shallow. As they laid him on the floor near the hearth, Emma tucked her favorite doll beside him. "Martha will keep him company," she explained seriously. "She's very good at making people feel better." Sarah busied herself adding wood to the fire, trying to ignore the stranger now occupying her home. What had she done? Invited death in for supper, most likely. Yet as she glanced at the man's face, slack in unconsciousness, she saw no malice there. Just a person, like her, caught in winter's merciless grip. She kept the rifle close all the same. Maka surfaced slowly from darkness, aware first of warmth, then pain. His extremities burned as circulation returned. A fire crackled nearby. He could hear the snap of wood, smell the smoke. Not an Apache fire. This one burned settler wood, not the desert plants whose scent he knew intimately. His eyes opened to rough-hewn log walls. A white man's cabin. Instinct sent a surge of panic through him, and he tried to sit up. "He's awake, Mama." A child's voice, high and excited. Maka turned his head to see a small girl with golden hair watching him, eyes round with curiosity. Behind her stood a woman, tall and straight-backed, a rifle held casually in her hands. "Don't move too quickly," the woman said. Her voice was firm but not unkind. "Your feet and hands are frostbitten." Maka looked down at his hands. They had been wrapped in clean cloths, as had his feet. Someone had removed his frozen moccasins. The medicine pouch still hung around his neck. That small mercy eased his mind somewhat. He tried to speak, but his throat was parched. The woman seemed to understand. She nodded to the girl, who brought a cup of water. Maka took it with wrapped hands, nodding his thanks. The woman kept her distance, the rifle ever present. "Do you speak English?" she asked. Maka understood the question but chose not to answer. Better they think him ignorant. Knowledge was protection. "My name Emma," the little girl said, speaking slowly and loudly as if volume would bridge the language gap. She pointed to herself, then to the woman. "My mama." Despite himself, Maka almost smiled at the child's earnestness. She reminded him of his sister's daughters, before the sickness took them. The woman set a bowl of something hot beside him, a thin stew with pieces of venison. His stomach cramped at the smell, reminding him how long it had been since he'd eaten. Still, pride made him hesitate. "Eat," the woman said, not a request. Understanding crossed barriers of language. Maka nodded slightly and began to eat, awkward with his bandaged hands. The food was bland by Apache standards. These white settlers knew nothing of the desert herbs that gave flavor, but it was hot and filling. The little girl, Emma, watched him eat with undisguised fascination. "What's that?" she asked, pointing to his medicine pouch. Before he could react, her mother stepped forward. "Emma, don't bother him." But the girl persisted. "Is it magic?" Maka looked at her, then deliberately set down his spoon. With bandaged fingers, he opened the pouch and removed the carved horse, holding it out to show her. Emma gasped with delight. "A horse? Did you make it?" Maka shook his head. "Father," he said, the first word he had spoken in their presence. The woman's eyebrows rose slightly at this evidence he understood them. Emma pointed to herself again. "My papa made things too, but he's in heaven now." "Emma," her mother warned, but there was more sadness than sharpness in her tone. Maka nodded solemnly at the girl, acknowledging her loss. Death was a companion all people shared, regardless of their differences. The woman moved to a shelf and took down a leather-bound book. Maka recognized it as the kind white men used to trap their thoughts on paper. She leafed through it with practiced familiarity. "Robert says here that frostbite should be warmed slowly," she murmured, half to herself. "No rubbing. Keep the skin clean and watch for blackening." She glanced up, catching Maka watching her. Their eyes met briefly before she looked away. "The storm's getting worse," she said, more to her daughter than to him. "We're all stuck here for now." Maka understood the unspoken message. When the storm passed, he would be expected to leave. That was fair. He owed them for his life, but he would not impose. Emma had crept closer while her mother was distracted. She touched the carved horse gently. "Pretty," she whispered. Against his better judgment, Maka found himself placing the small treasure in her palm. "Hold," he said, the word rough in his throat. Her smile was like sunrise breaking over the mountains. 3 days passed with the storm showing no signs of relenting. The wind howled like a living thing, and snow piled against the cabin walls. Inside, an uneasy truce had formed. Sarah kept the rifle within reach but no longer held it constantly. Maka had proven himself neither threat nor burden. Despite his injured hands and feet, he insisted on contributing, showing surprising skill at repairing a broken chair and mending Emma's torn doll with sinew from his pouch. "My mother taught all her sons to sew," he explained when he caught Sarah watching him. His English, though accented, was better than she had initially thought. A warrior who cannot mend his own clothing dies of exposure before the enemy finds him. It was the most he'd spoken at once, and Sarah found herself nodding. "My father said something similar about farmers." A shared glance, brief understanding between two practical people, before Sarah turned away to check their dwindling supplies. Emma had appointed herself Maka's official helper and translator, though her translations often bore little resemblance to what either adult had actually said. She chattered constantly, filling the silences that might otherwise have grown uncomfortable. "This is my mama's special tea," she informed Maka, watching as Sarah steeped pine needles for their vitamin content. "It keeps away the winter sleepies." "Scurvy," Sarah corrected. "It prevents scurvy." Maka nodded. "We use pinyon sap and berries. Same purpose." That evening, as Emma played with her doll near the fire, Maka worked on something small, his bandaged hands moving carefully. Sarah watched from the corner of her eye while mending a pair of Robert's old trousers. She'd decided that if, when the stranger left, he wouldn't freeze in his damp buckskins. "For small one," Maka said suddenly, holding out a carved whistle made from a piece of firewood, "to call birds in spring." Emma squealed with delight, taking the gift with reverent hands. She put it to her lips and blew, producing a clear, sweet note that made Sarah jump. "What do you say, Emma?" Sarah prompted. "Thank you." Emma bounced on her toes. "Can you teach me to make one?" Before Maka could answer, a log shifted in the fireplace, sending a shower of sparks toward Emma's dress. In one fluid motion, Maka reached out, pulling the child away from danger. Sarah was on her feet instantly, heart pounding. But there was no need for alarm. Emma was safe, looking up at Maka with wide eyes. "You move fast," she said admiringly. "Like a mountain lion." The tension eased from Sarah's shoulders. "Thank you," she said quietly to Maka. He inclined his head slightly, acknowledging her words. Later, after Emma had fallen asleep in the small alcove that served as her bedroom, Sarah brought out the bundle she'd been preparing. "These were my husband's," she said, holding out the mended trousers and a woolen shirt. "They'll be warmer than your buckskins until those dry properly." Maka hesitated, clearly understanding the significance of the offering. "Your man, he is gone long?" "2 winters," Sarah replied, surprising herself with her willingness to answer. Maka nodded slowly. "The spirits guided his path to the stars, as they will guide all our paths when time comes." The simple words, spoken with quiet certainty, touched Sarah unexpectedly. Not the empty platitudes the pastor had offered, nor the awkward condolences of neighbors, just acknowledgement of a natural truth. "The clothes," she said, returning to practical matters. "They should fit well enough." Maka accepted the bundle with formal gravity. "I am grateful." That night, as Sarah lay awake listening to the storm, she realized the stranger no longer seemed quite so strange. In the faint glow of the banked fire, she could see him sleeping on the floor, now dressed in Robert's clothes. The sight should have disturbed her, this Apache man wearing her dead husband's garments. Instead, it felt like an odd kind of continuity, as if Robert's protection of their home continued through this unexpected guest. Outside, the wind began to ease at last, Morning brought clear skies but drifts taller than a man. Sarah opened the door to a wall of white, the world beyond buried. They were still trapped, but at least the howling wind had ceased. Maka stood behind her, surveying the transformed landscape. Many days before path clears, he observed. Sarah nodded, calculating their supplies. We'll manage. Her tone conveyed more confidence than she felt. While Emma still slept, Maka ventured outside through the window, creating a narrow path to the woodpile. His feet had healed enough for short excursions, though Sarah had insisted he wear Robert's old boots. By the time Emma awoke, he had cleared enough snow to open the door properly and was bringing in fresh wood. "You're strong again," Emma declared, watching him work. "Strong enough," he replied with a slight smile. Sarah was at her work table, grinding dried plants with a mortar and pestle. Maka approached cautiously, observing her work. "Medicine?" he asked. She nodded. "For fevers and coughs. Winter always brings sickness." Maka studied the mixture with professional interest. "Willow bark good. Pine too." He pointed to another jar. "What is this one?" "Echinacea. Purple coneflower." Sarah opened the jar, revealing dried purple petals. "It grows in the meadow behind our cabin. I dry it in summer. We use this also. Very strong medicine." He looked at her with new respect. "You are healer?" Sarah shook her head. "Not like a doctor. Just what my grandmother taught me, and what I've learned living out here." She hesitated, then reached under the table for a small deerskin bag she'd been working on. Similar to his medicine pouch but with her own stitching pattern. "I've been making this for organizing my herbs." Maka nodded approval. "Good crafting. Strong stitches." He pointed to the design she'd unconsciously incorporated. "This pattern means healing in my people's symbols." Sarah looked at the bag with surprise. "I didn't know. I just thought it looked right." "Some knowledge lives in hands, not head," Maka said. "Your hands remember what ancestors knew." Their eyes met briefly, a moment of understanding passing between them. Emma broke the moment, bounding over to show Maka a drawing she'd made of all three of them. As the day progressed, Sarah noticed Maka watching her work with various herbs. Finally, he spoke up. "This root," he said, pointing to one she was preparing. "Better if you scrape skin, not cut. Keeps strength inside." Sarah tried his method and found the root released more of its aromatic oils. "How do you know these things?" she asked. "Grandfather was medicine man. Taught me from boy time." He gestured to the mountains visible through the window. "All medicine out there if you know how to look. Will you show me sometime?" The question surprised Sarah as much as Maka. He nodded slowly. "When snow melts, many plants sleep now." That evening, as they sat by the fire, Sarah found herself speaking of Robert. How he died in a storm much like the one just passed. "He was only 3 miles from home," she said, her voice low so as not to wake Emma. "If he'd just found shelter, waited it out." "Proud man?" Maka asked gently. Sarah looked up, startled by his insight. "Yes. Too proud to stop. Always pushing forward." Maka nodded. "Like me in storm. Too proud to seek help." He glanced toward Emma's sleeping form. "Good she found me. Pride is poor companion in death. She's like her father that way, sees people, not differences." Sarah twisted her wedding ring, a habit when thinking of Robert. "I've tried to teach her caution, but caution good. Fear not good." Maka's voice was soft but firm. "She has brave heart. Like mother." Sarah started to object, then stopped, considering. Was it bravery that had made her take in this stranger? Or merely human decency? "Among my people," Maka continued, "we say winter reveals true soul. Easy to be good when sun shines. In cold, hard times, that is when we see what lives in heart." Sarah looked at him thoughtfully. "And what does this winter reveal about you, Maka?" He met her gaze steadily. That I have much to learn about courage. From small girl and her mother. The firelight caught the gold of her wedding band, and for the first time, it felt less like a tether to the past and more like a reminder of love's enduring lessons. The days settled into a rhythm. Mornings brought work, clearing snow, tending the fire, preparing food. Afternoons often found Maka teaching Emma simple Apache words while Sarah sewed or preserved what remained of their winter meat. Evenings were for stories around the fire. A week after the storm, Sarah was organizing a drawer when she found an old silver hand mirror, a wedding gift she rarely used. Maka was whittling by the fire, creating a small wooden animal for Emma. On impulse, Sarah brought the mirror to him. "Have you seen these before?" she asked. Maka took the mirror carefully, studying his reflection with undisguised interest. In trading posts, never held one. He turned it, watching light play across the surface. "Like water that never moves." "Keep it," Sarah said, surprising herself. "I have no use for it." That night, after Emma was asleep, Maka spoke more openly than before. "My people are scattered now, some on reservation land, some still free." His voice carried no bitterness, only fact. "I disagreed with new chief. He wants war with whites. I am healer, not warrior." "Is that why you were alone in the storm?" Sarah asked. Maka nodded. "Left to gather winter medicines. To think." He paused. "Chief believes old ways are dead. That Apache must fight or die. And you believe differently?" "I believe in survival. In wisdom." His eyes reflected firelight. "Fighting brings only death. Death of body for warriors. Death of spirit for survivors on reservations." Sarah considered his words. "Most settlers would say coexistence is impossible. Most Apache say same." A sad smile touched his lips. "Few on either side try to understand. Easier to hate." Emma whimpered in her sleep then, caught in a nightmare. Sarah moved to comfort her, but Maka gently touched her arm. "May I?" Sarah hesitated, then nodded. Maka approached the sleeping child and began to sing softly, a gentle Apache melody with words Sarah couldn't understand. Emma settled immediately, her face relaxing. "Song says spirits watch over sleeping children," Maka explained when he returned. "To the fire. My mother sang to me." "It's beautiful," Sarah said quietly. "Your daughter fears losing you," Maka observed. "As she lost father." Sarah sighed. "She tries to be so brave, but at night, the fears come. Children see truth adults hide from. Feel things deeply." He picked up his carving again. "My sister's daughters were same age before sickness took them." The simple statement revealed volumes. Sarah suddenly understood his gentleness with Emma. He saw his lost nieces in her. "I'm sorry," she said softly. Maka nodded acceptance of her sympathy. "Life continues, even after great loss." He looked at her directly. "You know this truth also." The next morning brought unexpected excitement. Maka spotted deer tracks in the snow and suggested a hunting expedition. Sarah retrieved Robert's rifle. "You shoot well?" Maka asked as they prepared to leave Emma with strict instructions to bar the door. "Better than most men," Sarah replied without boasting. In the winter forest, they moved in comfortable silence. Sarah was surprised by how naturally they worked together, Maka tracking, she with the rifle ready. When a buck appeared in a clearing, Sarah took careful aim. The shot echoed through the trees. The buck dropped cleanly, a perfect heart shot. Maka nodded with genuine respect. Quick death. No suffering. Good hunt. As they dressed the deer, a different kind of respect developed between them. Two capable people performing necessary work with skill and efficiency. Their hands occasionally brushed, causing Sarah to feel an unexpected warmth despite the freezing air. Back at the cabin, Emma greeted them with excitement. "You got a deer." Are you going to cook it like Papa showed you, Mama? Actually, Sarah said, glancing at Maka, I thought we might try something different. Would you show us how your people prepare venison? Maka's smile was answer enough. That night, they feasted on venison prepared with pine nuts and wild herbs Maka had in his medicine pouch. The flavors were unfamiliar but delicious. For the first time since Robert's death, the cabin felt truly warm. 2 weeks after the great storm, the snow had receded enough to create pathways around the cabin. Emma celebrated her newfound freedom by building snow figures in the yard while Sarah and Maka repaired the roof where snow weight had damaged shingles. Working side by side, they developed an easy rhythm, handing tools back and forth with few words needed. Sarah found herself studying Maka's profile against the winter sky. The straight nose, the firm jaw softened now by the beginnings of a smile as he watched Emma below. She has much joy, he observed. Children are resilient, Sarah replied. Sometimes I think they weather storms better than we do. Maka nodded. They bend like young trees. Adults become stiff, break in strong winds. He secured another shingle. You raised good daughter, strong but gentle. The compliment warmed Sarah more than it should have. Her father deserves much of the credit. He taught her to see wonder in everything. Good father, Maka said. Good man. That evening, Emma asked about the lands beyond their homestead. Where did you come from, Maka? Is it far? Sarah realized she'd never asked this basic question. She watched as Maka tried to explain distances to a child. Perhaps I can help, she said, going to Robert's trunk. From it, she withdrew a leather case containing carefully drawn maps. Robert surveyed this territory before we settled here. She unrolled a large map on the table. It showed the Dakota Territory in meticulous detail: rivers, mountains, valleys. But what caught Makoa's attention were the carefully labeled areas marked Apache winter grounds and Apache hunting lands. He looked at Sarah questioningly. Robert believed boundaries should be respected, she explained. He said the tribes were here first and had rights to their traditional lands. She traced a line with her finger. He refused to settle anywhere that encroached on tribal territories. That's why we chose this valley. It was unclaimed by any tribe. Maka studied the map with new interest. Most white men see empty land, not Apache home. He pointed to an area. My people winter here. Summer hunting grounds here. His finger traced a route. I traveled north this way. Emma leaned against him, watching. Will you take me to see your home someday? An awkward silence fell. Sarah busied herself with re-rolling the maps, avoiding Maka's eyes. They all knew he would leave when the snow melted completely. The thought left an unexpected hollowness in her chest. The next morning, Sarah awoke to Emma's frightened calls. Wolves had circled the cabin overnight, leaving tracks in the snow. As she calmed her daughter, Maka examined the prints. For maybe 5. Hungry, he looked at the treeline. We'll return tonight. They spent the day preparing, reinforcing the chicken coop, bringing extra firewood inside, checking the rifle. As dusk approached, tension filled the small cabin. Sure enough, as darkness fell, haunting howls echoed across the valley. They're coming for us, aren't they? Emma whispered, clutching her doll. They're just hungry animals, Sarah assured her, though her hand tightened on the rifle. When scratching sounds came at the door, Maka took up Robert's old axe. He and Sarah exchanged a glance, understanding passing between them without words. If the wolves broke through, they would protect Emma at all costs. The attack came swiftly, a wolf hurling itself against the window, cracking the glass. Sarah fired through the broken pane, her shot going wide in the darkness. Maka positioned himself by the door as it shuddered under the weight of another wolf. When the door splintered, Maka swung the axe in a powerful arc, catching the lead wolf in mid-leap. Sarah fired again, this time finding her mark. The remaining wolves retreated, leaving 2 dead companions behind. In the sudden silence, Sarah became aware that she was trembling. Maka gently took the rifle, checking that it was safe before setting it aside. His hand brushed hers, lingering for just a moment. Their eyes met, adrenaline and something more electric between them. "You protect family like Apache warrior," he said softly. "We protected each other," she corrected, equally quiet. Emma emerged from her hiding place, eyes wide. "Are we safe now?" Maka knelt to her level. "Yes, little one. Wolves learned this family too strong to attack." "Our family," Emma said, throwing her arms around his neck. Over the child's head, Maka's eyes met Sarah's, a question in their depths that neither was ready to answer. The wolf attack left them with extra meat to smoke and hides to tan. Working together had become natural now, their movements around each other easy and familiar. Sarah caught herself smiling more often, while Maka's stern features had softened. Emma flourished in the warmth of their unusual household. One bright morning, Sarah was hanging laundry while Maka taught Emma to identify animal tracks in the melting snow. The peaceful scene shattered at the sound of approaching horses. "Someone's coming," Emma called excitedly. Sarah tensed immediately. They hadn't seen another soul in over a month. "Emma!" Inside. "Now!" Maka straightened, alert to the change in her voice. Their eyes met in silent communication before he slipped quietly into the cabin. 2 riders appeared around the bend, bearded men in fur hats and heavy coats. Trappers by the look of their gear. Sarah forced a neighborly smile while positioning herself between the approaching men and the cabin door. "Morning, ma'am," the older man called. "Horace Buxton and my partner Jim. Been trapped by that big storm up in the high country. Mighty glad to see a friendly face." "Sarah Miller," she replied. "You're welcome to water your horses." The younger man, Jim, was scanning the property with undisguised curiosity. "You out here all alone, Mrs. Miller?" Before Sarah could answer, Emma burst from the cabin. "Mama, are they staying for dinner? We have lots of wolf meat." Buxton laughed. "Wolf meat? That's desperate eating, little miss." "It's not so bad the way Maka cooks it," Emma replied innocently. Sarah's heart sank as both men stiffened. "Maka," Buxton repeated, hand moving to his belt where a pistol hung. "My helper," Sarah improvised. "After my husband passed, I hired help." The men exchanged looks. "Indian help?" Jim asked, his voice hardening. "Wouldn't be a tall Apache, would it?" The cabin door opened, and Maka stepped out. He changed into Robert's clothes again, but nothing could disguise his heritage. He stood straight and dignified, though Sarah noted how he positioned himself to shield Emma. "This is Mr. Buxton and Jim," Sarah said carefully. "They've been trapped by the storm and need rest." "Don't need nothing from no Apache," Buxton spat. "Ma'am, you might not have heard, but the Army's been hunting a renegade buck who murdered a settler family near Fort Pierre." "Apache," they said. "Maka works for me," Sarah said firmly. "Has all winter." Jim dismounted, hand on his pistol. "Maybe, maybe not. Cavalry's offering $50 for information leading to the savage. Description matches your helper." "You've been misinformed," Sarah said, fighting to keep her voice steady. "Now, you're welcome to water your horses and be on your way." "Might just stay the night," Buxton said, also dismounting. "Roads are still bad. Wouldn't be neighborly to turn us away." Sarah recognized the implicit threat. 2 armed men against a woman and child, they expected compliance. They hadn't counted on Maka, whose stillness reminded her of a mountain lion before it pounces. "One night," she conceded, calculating their options. "I haven't much to offer." "Wolf meat'll do," Jim smirked. "Want to hear how your helper cooks it?" The evening was a study in tension. The trappers monopolized the conversation with crude jokes and pointed comments about Indian troubles. Sarah noticed how they positioned themselves, always keeping Maka in sight, hands never far from their weapons. Emma, sensing the undercurrents, stayed close to Sarah. Once, when Jim made a particularly offensive comment, she piped up, "Maka is the nicest person I know. He made me a whistle and taught me Apache words." "Emma," Sarah warned, seeing Buxton's face darken. "Apache words?" the older trapper repeated. "Getting mighty friendly with this savage, ain't you, ma'am?" "Mr. Buxton," Sarah said coldly. "In my home we speak with respect." "Respect?" Jim laughed. "For a murderin' Apache?" Maka, who had remained silent throughout, finally spoke. "I have killed no one." The simple dignity of his statement hung in the air. Buxton spat into the fire. "We'll be riding to Fort Thompson tomorrow," he said. "Army patrol's been stationed there. They'll be mighty interested to hear about your arrangement." As Sarah met Makara's eyes across the table, she realized their brief idyll was over. Whatever grew between them now faced a threat deadlier than any winter storm. Dawn came too quickly. Sarah had barely slept, her mind racing with plans and fears. The trappers rose early, clearly eager to reach Fort Thompson with their news. "Appreciate the hospitality, Mrs. Miller," Buxton said, not bothering to hide his smirk. "Army'll probably send someone to check on you." Sarah stood in the doorway, arms crossed. "Safe travels, gentlemen." As their horses disappeared down the trail, Maka emerged from the shadows of the barn where he'd spent the night, away from the trapper's suspicious eyes. "I must go," he said simply. Sarah had expected this, yet the words still struck her like physical blows. "Where?" "North. Canadian border, perhaps." His face revealed nothing, but his eyes held regret. "They will come for me. Bring trouble to you and Emma." "You didn't do what they accused you of, did you?" Sarah asked, though she already knew the answer. Maka shook his head. "I tried to help wounded settler child. Cavalry patrol saw Apache with dead white family. Did not wait for truth." Sarah believed him without hesitation. The man who had carved toys for Emma, who sang lullabies to soothe her nightmares, was no murderer. "We'll go with you," she said suddenly, surprising herself with the decision. "No." Maka's response was immediate. "Too dangerous. Winter not finished. Child would suffer. And what happens when the army comes? They'll question Emma. She'll tell them everything. She doesn't understand the danger." Sarah stepped closer. "They might decide I helped you escape. A woman alone has few protections under the law." Maka's expression darkened as he considered this. "Where would you go?" "Leave home your husband built. There's a Quaker settlement 3 days' ride east," Sarah said. "Robert traded with them. They believe in peace between all peoples. They might help us reach the truth of what happened." Emma appeared in the doorway, still in her nightgown. "Are we going on an adventure?" Sarah and Maka exchanged glances. "Yes," Sarah said finally. "A short journey to visit friends." While Sarah packed essentials, food, clothing, Robert's maps and journal, her herbs and medical supplies, Maka prepared the horses. They had only 2, Sarah's mare and Robert's old gelding. They would need to ride double, with Emma sharing Sarah's saddle. As Maka checked the gelding's hooves, he found something in the packed snow, a brass button emblazoned with the U.S. Cavalry insignia. He showed it silently to Sarah. "They've been watching us," she whispered, glancing toward the tree-line. "Maybe since before the trappers arrived." "We leave now," Maka decided. Different path than planned. Through high country. Within the hour, they were mounted and ready. Emma, excited by the adventure, chattered happily, unaware of the gravity of their situation. Sarah took one last look at the cabin, the home Robert had built, where Emma had taken her first steps, where she had thought to live out her days. "We'll come back," she promised herself silently. The first miles passed uneventfully as they followed game trails through melting snow. Maka led them on a circuitous route, occasionally doubling back or crossing streams to confuse any pursuit. By midday, they had climbed into steeper terrain where patches of forest alternated with open meadows. During a brief rest, Maka scouted from a high point and returned with grim news. Riders, for maybe 5, following our trail. Cavalry? Sarah asked, her mouth dry with fear. Buckskins, not uniforms. Trappers brought others. Maka's eyes were hard. Bounty hunters. Emma, building a small snowman nearby, remained oblivious to the danger. Sarah watched her daughter's innocent play and felt a surge of fierce protectiveness. "What now?" she asked. "We ride hard for Quakerland. Hope to reach before dark tomorrow." Maka hesitated, then added, "If separated, follow river east. Settlement near Big Bend with 3 tall pines." "We won't separate," Sarah said firmly, but she committed the directions to memory nonetheless. As they mounted again, Emma snuggled against Sarah's back. "I like adventures with you and Maka, Mama." Sarah exchanged a look with Maka over her daughter's head. In his eyes, she read the same determination that burned in her own heart. Whatever came, they would face it together. "I like adventures with Maka too," she said softly. They rode until dusk, pushing the horses as much as they dared through the melting snow. When darkness made further travel dangerous, Maka found a sheltered hollow beneath an overhanging rock. Not quite a cave, but enough to block the wind and hide their small fire from distant eyes. Emma fell asleep almost immediately, exhausted from the day's journey. Sarah covered her with an extra blanket before joining Maka at the edge of their campsite, where he kept watch over the darkened valley below. "Do you see them?" she whispered. "No, but they follow." He pointed to distant ridges. "We'll not travel at night in this country. Too dangerous. We have until morning." Sarah hugged herself against the cold. "Will we reach the settlement tomorrow? If horses stay strong. If weather holds." Maka's profile was sharp against the night sky. "If hunters do not catch us first." The stark assessment hung between them. Sarah had known the risks when she decided to leave with him, but reality was setting in. She had placed Emma in danger, perhaps the very danger she'd sought to avoid. "I should not have let you come," Maka said, as if reading her thoughts. "Your place was safe at cabin." "Was it?" Sarah turned to face him. "What would have happened if I'd stayed? The army would have questioned us. Emma would have told them everything in her innocent way. They might have decided I harbored a fugitive. A woman alone has no standing against such accusations." Maka considered this. "Still, risk is great. Some things are worth the risk." Sarah's voice was soft but firm. "Emma has grown to love you. And I." She stopped, uncertain how to continue. Maka's hand found hers in the darkness. The touch was tentative, questioning. When she didn't pull away, his fingers intertwined with hers. They stood in silence, this small connection somehow more intimate than words. Finally, Sarah spoke again. "Why did you stay with us so long? You could have left weeks ago when your strength returned." Maka was quiet for so long she thought he might not answer. At first because of Storm, then because little one needed protection. Then he turned to face her, his expression solemn in the moonlight. "Because I found peace in your home I had not known since childhood." The simple truth of his words touched her deeply. "We found peace too," she whispered. "After Robert died, I thought that part of my life was over." Emma stirred in her sleep, murmuring something unintelligible. Both adults turned to look at the child. In the dim glow of the banked fire, Sarah could see that Emma had been drawing in a small book Robert had given her. Pictures of 3 figures holding hands. A woman, a child, and a tall man with dark hair. "She sees us as family," Sarah said quietly. "And you?" Maka's question was barely audible. Before Sarah could answer, a distant sound caught their attention. The faint whinny of a horse carried on the night wind. They should not be moving at night, Maka frowned. Unless what? Unless cavalry has joined Hunt. They know these lands better than trappers. Might risk night travel on clear paths. They spent the rest of the night in uneasy watchfulness, taking turns to sleep briefly while the other kept guard. Before dawn, they were moving again, climbing higher into the hills before descending toward the river that would lead them to the settlement. By midday, Emma's initial excitement had faded into tired complaints. My legs hurt, Mama. How much farther? Not far, little one, Maka assured her, though his eyes constantly scanned the horizon behind them. They paused at a stream to rest the horses. While Emma splashed in the shallow water, momentarily forgetting her discomfort, Maka took Sarah aside. Riders gaining. For men, well armed. His voice was grim, and tracks of unshod ponies crossing our path. More hunters. No, Apache. Maka's expression was unreadable. My people also in these hills. Is that good or bad for us? Depends which band. Some would help. Others. He didn't finish the thought. As they prepared to move on, Emma discovered a patch of early spring flowers pushing through the melting snow. She gathered a small bouquet, presenting it solemnly to Maka. For luck, she explained. Mama says flowers are brave to grow when it's still cold. We need to be brave too. Maka accepted the gift with equal solemnity, tucking a single bloom into his medicine pouch. Brave flowers will help guide our path, he told her, lifting her onto the horse with Sarah. As they rode, Sarah felt a growing certainty that whatever awaited them at journey's end, the three of them had already become something new together, something worth fighting for. By late afternoon, the landscape began to change. The wild hills gave way to more cultivated land, a sign they were approaching the Quaker settlement. Maka pointed to a rise ahead. Beyond that ridge, settlement in valley. Almost there. Sarah felt hope surge within her. They had traveled hard, stopping only when necessary for the horses or for Emma's sake. Their pursuers had fallen behind, or so they thought. As they crested the ridge, the settlement came into view, a cluster of simple buildings. Nestled in a protected valley, smoke rose peacefully from chimneys. Fields lay prepared for spring planting. It looks so quiet, Sarah said. So safe. Maka nodded, but his posture remained vigilant. Still far. Must cross open ground. They had just started down the slope when the sound of hoofbeats made them freeze. From a copse of trees to their right emerged 6 riders in the unmistakable blue uniforms of the U.S. Cavalry. At their head rode a sergeant with a weathered face and cold eyes. That's far enough, the sergeant called, raising his hand. His men fanned out, effectively blocking the path to the settlement. Sarah instinctively pulled Emma closer against her. Maka sat straight on his horse, his face impassive, though Sarah could sense the tension in his body. I'm Sarah Miller, she said, forcing her voice to remain steady. We're traveling to visit friends in the settlement. The sergeant's eyes never left Maka. Ma'am, you're harboring a wanted man. That Apache is sought for the murder of the Peterson family near Fort Pierre. There's been a mistake, Sarah insisted. He's been with us all winter. He couldn't have. Step away from the savage, ma'am, the sergeant interrupted, his hand moving to his pistol. You and the child come this way. Now. Emma clutched Sarah tighter. Mama, I'm scared. The sergeant's expression hardened. Ma'am, don't make this harder than it needs to be. That buck killed a woman and 2 children. Butchered them like animals. To Sarah's surprise, Maka spoke, his English clear and deliberate. I killed no one, Sergeant Mitchell. The sergeant started at the use of his name. You know me, Apache? I know you led patrol that found dead settlers. I know you need someone to blame. Maka's voice remained calm. I was there to help wounded child. You arrived after real killers gone. Liar, Mitchell spat. We saw you with the bodies. You saw healer trying to save life, Maka countered. Did you look at tracks around cabin? Not Apache. Shod horses. White men's boots. A younger soldier shifted uncomfortably in his saddle. Sergeant. There were those strange tracks by the creek. Shut up, Collins, Mitchell snapped. This Apache's trying to confuse you. Sarah saw the hesitation in some of the soldiers' faces. Please, she said, addressing them rather than Mitchell. Just let us reach the settlement. The Quakers will give us sanctuary while the truth is determined. The truth is he's a murderer, Mitchell said flatly. And you're obstructing justice. He turned to his men. Dawson, take the woman and child. The rest of you secure the Apache. As the soldiers moved forward, Sarah made a split-second decision. She pulled Robert's rifle from its scabbard and leveled it at Mitchell. Stay back, she commanded. The rifle was steady in her hands. The sergeant's face flushed with anger. You'd defend this savage against your own kind? He's bewitched you, woman. He saved my daughter's life, Sarah replied. He's lived honorably in my home all winter. I know his character better than you ever could. Mama! Emma's frightened cry drew Sarah's attention for just a second. Enough time for one of the soldiers to spur his horse forward, reaching for the rifle. Maka moved with startling speed, wheeling his horse between Sarah and the soldier. The collision sent both men tumbling from their mounts. Maka rolled to his feet first, coming up with the soldier's dropped carbine. Chaos erupted. Soldiers drew weapons. Mitchell bellowed orders. Emma screamed, "Run!" Maka shouted to Sarah, firing the carbine into the air. Not at the soldiers, but creating confusion. Sarah hesitated only a moment before spurring her horse forward. Emma clutched tightly before her. They galloped toward the settlement, bullets whistling past them. Looking back, she saw Maka holding the soldiers at bay, giving them time to escape. Mitchell had dismounted and was advancing on him, pistol drawn. "No!" Sarah cried, but her voice was lost in the distance and gunfire. As they raced toward the settlement, Emma sobbing against her chest, Sarah's heart tore between her daughter's safety and the man they had left behind. Sarah's horse thundered toward the settlement, foam flecking its mouth from the hard run. As they approached, she saw figures emerging from buildings, alarmed by the gunfire echoing across the valley. "Help!" she called, her voice breaking. "Please help us." An elderly man with a long white beard stepped forward as several younger men hurried to catch her horse's bridle. "Friend, what troubles thee?" the old man asked, his calm voice a stark contrast to the chaos they'd fled. "Soldiers, cavalry?" Sarah gasped, sliding from the saddle with Emma still clutched tightly in her arms. "They're going to kill him." The old man, clearly the settlement's elder, took in the situation quickly. "Samuel, Thomas, gather the men," he instructed. Two young men ran to comply. "My name is Ezekiel Wright," he told Sarah. "Thee is safe here." "It's not me I'm worried about," Sarah said, setting Emma down but keeping her close. "They have Maka, an Apache man who saved us. They're accusing him of murders he didn't commit." Ezekiel's face grew grave. "The cavalry has no authority within our settlement. We answer to a higher law." He turned as a group of men approached, some carrying tools that might serve as weapons in desperate times. "No violence," he cautioned them. "We will stand firm in peace." A woman stepped forward to take Emma's hand. "Come, child. Let's find thee something warm to drink while thy mother speaks with Elder Wright." Emma clung to Sarah. "No, I want to help Maka too." "She stays with me," Sarah insisted, then turned back to Ezekiel. "Please, there's no time. They were beating him when we escaped." The sound of horses approaching drew everyone's attention. A mounted party emerged from the trees, the cavalry patrol, with Maka bound and riding double with one of the soldiers. His face was bloodied, but he sat straight, dignity intact despite his bonds. Sergeant Mitchell rode at the front, his expression thunderous as he surveyed the gathered Quakers. "This doesn't concern you people," he called. "We're retrieving a murderer and a woman who aided his escape." Ezekiel stepped forward, his slight frame somehow commanding despite the armed men facing him. "Friend, thee brings weapons to a place of peace. We cannot permit this." Mitchell's hand moved to his pistol. "We have legal authority to arrest this Apache. Stand aside." "Thy authority ends at our boundaries," Ezekiel replied calmly. This settlement was granted autonomy by the territorial governor himself. From his pocket, he produced a small medallion, the governor's seal of protection for the pacifist community. While they argued, Sarah searched the faces of the soldiers. She found the young one who had questioned the sergeant earlier, Collins, and addressed him directly. "You know something isn't right," she called to him. "You saw evidence that contradicted the sergeant's story, didn't you?" Collins shifted uncomfortably under Mitchell's glare. "It's not my place to question." "It is precisely thy place to question unjust orders," Ezekiel interrupted gently. "All men answer to conscience first." "Enough!" Mitchell's voice cracked like a whip. "Collins, secure the woman. She'll face charges too." Before anyone could move, Emma broke free from Sarah's grasp and ran toward the soldiers, stopping directly in front of Mitchell's horse. "Don't hurt Maka," she cried, her small face fierce despite her tears. "He's good. He saved me from the wolves and taught me songs and made me a whistle." The sergeant's horse snorted and backed up, unsettled by the child's sudden appearance. For a moment, no one moved, the tableau frozen in the late afternoon light. A small girl confronting armed men, Quakers standing firm behind her. Sarah caught between terror for her daughter and pride in her courage. "Emma, come back," she called, moving forward. "Listen to her," Maka said, his deep voice carrying across the tense silence. "If you seek justice, hear the child. Children see truth adults cannot." From the edge of the settlement, a new rider approached, an officer by his uniform, with captain's bars gleaming on his shoulders. Mitchell straightened to attention, though his expression remained defiant. "Sergeant Mitchell," the newcomer said, surveying the scene. "I received a rather disturbing report from Private Collins here. Something about discrepancies in your account of the Peterson murders." Hope flared in Sarah's chest as she gathered Emma back into her arms. The young soldier, Collins, must have sent word ahead. "Captain Howard," Mitchell replied stiffly. "This is a simple matter of apprehending a fugitive." "Is it?" The captain dismounted, approaching Maka. "Because I've just spent 2 days interviewing settlers near Fort Pierre. Interesting things they had to say about a certain trapper who had a dispute with Peterson over hunting grounds." He turned to Mitchell. "Things that make your hasty conclusion about Apache raiders rather suspect." Mitchell's face had gone pale beneath his weathered tan. "Sir, I was following procedure." "We'll discuss procedure back at the fort," Captain Howard cut him off. He nodded to the soldiers holding Maka. "Release him. Now." The days that followed unfolded with a dreamlike quality for Sarah. The Quakers welcomed them with simple hospitality. Clean rooms, shared meals, and a profound absence of judgment that felt like a balm after their ordeal. Captain Howard remained at the settlement while he completed his investigation, interviewing each of them separately. To Sarah's surprise, he was thorough but fair, taking meticulous notes as she described finding Maka in the snow and their months together. "Mrs. Miller," he said as their interview concluded, "I want to apologize for what you and your daughter experienced. Sergeant Mitchell exceeded his authority and will face consequences." "What about Maka?" Sarah asked, the question that had consumed her thoughts. Howard's expression softened slightly. "The evidence is clear. The Peterson family was killed by white men, likely the Buxton brothers, who had threatened Mr. Peterson over trapping rights. We found their camp yesterday, with belongings from the Peterson homestead." Relief washed over Sarah. "So Maka is free?" "He is." Howard handed her a folded document bearing the territorial governor's seal. This is his official exoneration. He was attempting to save the Peterson boy, not harm him. The child sadly didn't survive his injuries, but your friend did everything possible to help. Sarah's fingers trembled as she accepted the document. Thank you for seeking the truth. Truth is my duty, Mrs. Miller. Howard hesitated. May I speak frankly? Sarah nodded. Your relationship with Maka. It's unusual. His tone held no condemnation, merely observation. You'll face difficulties if you choose to continue it. We've faced difficulties already, Sarah replied simply. Howard nodded. Indeed. Well, good day, Mrs. Miller. Sarah found Maka with Emma in the settlement's small orchard. Her daughter was teaching him a clapping game while he listened with solemn attention. The bruises on his face were fading, though a cut above his eye would likely leave a scar. Mama, look! Maka can do it perfect now. Emma demonstrated the pattern, which Maka duplicated with careful precision. Sarah held up the document. You're officially innocent. The real killers have been identified. Something like peace crossed Maka's features. Good. Not for me only. For Peterson family spirits also. They deserve justice. That evening, Elder Wright invited them to his home. Over tea served in simple pottery cups, he made them an unexpected offer. Our community needs a healer, he said. We've observed thy knowledge of plants and remedies, Maka. And Sarah, thy skills with the practical aspects of medicine would complement his traditional wisdom. Sarah glanced at Maka, whose face revealed nothing of his thoughts. We would welcome all three of you, Wright continued. We judge no one here except by the goodness of their hearts and the work of their hands. It's generous, Sarah said carefully. But I have a homestead, which will remain thy property, Wright assured her. Stay with us until thee decides thy path. Spring planting is still weeks away. Later, walking beneath stars that seemed impossibly bright after so much darkness, Sarah and Maka spoke of the future for the first time. What will you do now? She asked. Return to your people? Maka was quiet for several steps. Must visit them. Tell what happened. Bring gifts to sister's family. He glanced at her. But after. Path is unclear. His voice held an unfamiliar uncertainty. Where does your path lead, Sarah Miller? She thought of her cabin, standing empty in the melting snow, of the fields waiting for spring planting, of the years stretching ahead, once again alone but for Emma. I don't know, she admitted. Everything has changed. Emma's voice called to them from the doorway of their borrowed home. Mama, Maka, I'm ready for my story. They turned together toward the child who had brought them together with her innocent question in the snow. In her face, Sarah saw hope untarnished by the world's complications. Some things haven't changed, Maka observed softly. As they walked back to where Emma waited, their hands brushed, then deliberately intertwined. No words were needed in that moment. Whatever paths lay ahead, they would face the decision together. 3 weeks passed at the Quaker settlement. Spring emerged in earnest. Crocuses pushing through thawed earth, birds returning from southern journeys, the land reawakening. Sarah and Emma settled into the community's rhythms, helping with shared meals and spring planting. Sarah's knowledge of medicinal plants earned her respect among the practical Quakers, who valued useful skills regardless of background. The day Maka announced he must visit his people arrived with inevitable certainty. Sarah had known it was coming, had seen his gaze lingering on the western horizon. A scout from my band passed near settlement yesterday, he explained as they walked along the settlement's edge. My people camp 3 days' ride from here. They move north soon for summer hunting. Sarah nodded, fighting the tightness in her throat. When will you leave? Tomorrow at dawn. He hesitated. I do not know how long I will be gone. If you decide to stay with them, Sarah couldn't finish the thought. Maka stopped walking, turning to face her directly. Sarah Miller. I will return. She wanted to believe him, but she understood the pull of family, of tradition, of belonging. Your people need you, especially now with tensions rising. Yes, his honesty was unwavering, but need is not the only voice that guides path. He took her hand, the gesture now familiar between them. I have promised to keep. That evening, Emma was inconsolable when told of Maka's impending departure. Take me with you, she begged, clinging to him. I want to see your home. Not this time, little one, he said gently. First I must prepare way, make sure path is safe. You promise you'll come back? Her small face was fierce with determination. Cross your heart. Maka looked questioningly at Sarah, who whispered, It's a solemn vow children make. Cross your finger over your heart. He did so with appropriate gravity. I promise, Emma Miller. I will return. Later, after Emma had finally fallen asleep, Sarah found Maka outside, studying the stars. She joined him in silence, drawing comfort from his solid presence while she still could. I made something for your journey, she said finally, handing him a small package wrapped in cloth. Inside was a detailed drawing she had made, Emma's face captured with remarkable accuracy in charcoal. Beside it lay a lock of the child's golden hair, tied with a thread. To remember us by, she explained. Maka touched the drawing with gentle fingers, then carefully placed it in his medicine pouch alongside the carved horse and Emma's dried flower. I carry your faces already, he said. Here, he touched his chest. But this is good medicine for lonely trail. At dawn, Sarah and Emma stood with Elder Wright as Maka prepared to leave. He wore a mixture of his original Apache clothing and items given by the Quakers, a visible bridge between worlds. Safe journey, friend, Wright said, pressing a small bundle of provisions into Maka's hands. Remember, thee always has place here. Maka nodded thanks before kneeling to Emma's level. She threw her arms around his neck in a fierce hug. Don't forget to come back, she whispered. I remember, promise, he assured her, gently disentangling himself. When he turned to Sarah, words seemed inadequate. Their eyes held a conversation deeper than language. Fear, hope, unspoken feelings. Ride safely was all she could manage. Maka took her hand, pressed something into it, then closed her fingers around the object. Before she could look, he mounted his horse and rode away without looking back. Only after he had disappeared into the morning mist did Sarah open her hand. There lay a beautifully crafted Apache engagement blanket, miniature in size, woven from threads he must have collected over weeks. The traditional pattern spoke volumes about his intentions, his hopes for their future. What is it, Mama? Emma asked, peering at the tiny blanket. A promise, Sarah replied, carefully tucking it into her pocket near her heart. The weeks that followed tested Sarah's faith. Each day she scanned the horizon for a lone rider. Each night she held the tiny woven blanket, its patterns seeming to whisper of possibilities. Emma asked daily when Maka would return, her certainty never wavering. He promised, Mama, she would say with the absolute conviction of childhood. He crossed his heart. Spring advanced into early summer. The Quakers, true to their word, never pressured Sarah about her plans. She helped with their infirmary, combining her frontier knowledge with their methodical approaches to healing. The work was satisfying, the community accepting, yet something fundamental was missing. On the 40th day after Maka's departure, Sarah was hanging laundry when Emma's shout pierced the afternoon quiet. Mama, look, riders coming. Sarah shaded her eyes against the afternoon sun, her heart racing as she counted the approaching riders. 5 figures on horseback, moving at an unhurried pace. The lead rider was unmistakably Maka, his straight-backed posture familiar even at a distance. The others, 2 men and 2 women, were clearly Apache as well. Emma danced with impatience beside her. "It's him, Mama. I told you he'd come back." The Quakers gathered curiously but respectfully, with Elder Wright stepping forward to welcome the visitors. Sarah hung back, suddenly uncertain. Maka had returned, but with members of his tribe, perhaps to say a proper goodbye before rejoining his people permanently. The riders stopped at the settlement's edge. Maka dismounted first, then helped down an elderly woman whose silver-streaked hair was braided with ceremonial beads. Though stooped with age, she carried herself with unmistakable dignity. Maka spoke briefly to Elder Wright, who nodded and gestured welcomingly to the Apache visitors. Then Maka turned, scanning the gathered Quakers until his eyes found Sarah and Emma. Emma broke free, running toward him with abandon. "Maka, you came back." He caught her in his arms, lifting her high before setting her down with unusual formality. "I keep promise," he said simply. When Sarah approached, she saw new lines in his face, as if the journey had aged him. But his eyes held a certainty that hadn't been there before. "Sarah Miller," he said, the familiar way he spoke her full name sending warmth through her. "I bring people important to me." He gestured to the elderly woman. "This is Aponi, my grandfather's sister. She taught him healing ways, then taught me when he passed to spirit world." The old woman studied Sarah with keen eyes that missed nothing. "So," she said in surprisingly clear English, "this is the one who saved you from Snow Spirit." "She is," Maka confirmed. Pony nodded slowly. "Strong woman, good eyes, hands of a healer." She turned to Emma, who was watching the exchange with fascination. "And brave little one who asked question in snow." Emma beamed at being remembered in the story. "Others are my cousin Thunder Sky and his wife Morning Dove," Maka continued, indicating the younger couple. "And Raven Feather, son of our band's elder." The final man, who appeared to be a warrior in his prime, inclined his head respectfully. Sarah felt overwhelmed by the formality of the introductions. "You're all welcome," she managed. "The Quakers have been very generous with their hospitality." Pony snorted. "Quakers talk much about peace. Good to see they live words." That evening, a remarkable council formed in Elder Wright's home. Apache elders and Quaker leaders sat together, sharing food and careful conversation bridging vastly different worlds. Sarah watched in amazement as Maka moved between them, translating not just words but cultural concepts, finding common ground where none seemed possible. Later, when the others had retired, Maka walked with Sarah under a sky brilliant with stars. "Your people accepted you back," she observed, "even after your disagreement with the chief." "Quiet Bear is gone," Maka explained, "killed in raid against soldiers. Band follows Council of Elders now, seeking peaceful path." He was quiet for a moment. "They listened to my winter story. Aponi says Snow Spirit sent me to you for purpose." "What purpose?" "To build bridge between worlds, Apache and settler, old knowledge and new." He stopped walking, turning to face her. "They have asked me to be healer for Band again." Sarah's heart sank, though she tried to hide it. "That's good. They need you." "Yes." Maka's face was solemn in the moonlight. "But I told them I have new family now, that my path is with you and Emma." Sarah stared at him, hardly daring to believe. "You're staying?" "If you wish it." For the first time, uncertainty showed in his expression. "Aponi and others come to see place where I might live, to give blessing if path is good." "And is it?" "Good." Maka nodded slowly. "Aponi says land here has strong healing spirit. Good place for new beginning." He took her hands in his. "Sarah Miller, among my people, when man finds woman who walks same path with same heart, he offers to build home where both spirits can grow strong together." Sarah's eyes filled with tears, not of sadness but of overwhelming emotion. "Among my people, the woman usually says yes. The smile that transformed Maka's face was like sunrise breaking over mountains. He reached into his medicine pouch and withdrew something small, a ring woven from strands of horsehair and silver thread, crowned with a polished blue stone. "A pony helped make," he explained, his voice unusually shy. "Old Apache way. Stone from sacred mountain. Protects family." As he slipped it onto her finger, Sarah thought of Robert's gold band that she still wore. Somehow, this didn't feel like replacing that memory, but rather honoring it by finding the courage to love again. "What will your people think?" she asked. "About us. Some will not understand," he acknowledged. "But true family sees with heart, not just eyes." A pony has already claimed Emma as great-grandchild. As if summoned by her name, Emma appeared in the doorway of their borrowed home. "Mama, are you and Maka going to get married?" Sarah exchanged a glance with Maka, who nodded encouragingly. "Would that make you happy, Emma?" The child considered this with characteristic seriousness. "Only if we can all live together. And maybe have a dog." Maka laughed. A full, rich sound Sarah had rarely heard from him. "Dog is good start. Later, perhaps little brother or sister." Sarah felt her cheeks warm, but Emma was already bouncing with excitement. "Yes, when can we start building our house? Can it be part Apache and part like our old cabin?" Winter, 1874. Snow blanketed the Dakota Territory once again, but this time Sarah watched it fall with contentment rather than dread. Through the window of their new home, she could see Emma playing with Shadow, the wolf dog pup Maka had brought home in the summer. The child's laughter carried across the yard as she showed the dog how to catch snowflakes. Their home stood halfway between Sarah's original homestead and the Quaker settlement, a deliberate choice to bridge both worlds. The building itself told their story. Solid log walls like her former cabin, but with an interior arranged in the circular pattern of an Apache dwelling. Herbs hung drying from the rafters, some familiar to settlers, others from Maka's traditional knowledge. Inside, a pony sat by the fire, her gnarled fingers working on a small cradleboard decorated with intricate beadwork. The old woman had surprised everyone by choosing to remain with them rather than returning to the tribe. "Too old for more journeys," she had declared. "Better to pass knowledge to next generation here." The door opened, bringing a swirl of snowflakes and Maka, returning from checking his trap lines. His face, once so guarded, now relaxed into an easy smile at the sight of his family. "Storm coming," he announced, stamping snow from his boots. "Not as bad as last year, but enough." Sarah nodded, unconsciously resting a hand on her swelling belly. 5 months along now, the child growing strong within her. Maka crossed to her, placing his hand gently over hers, a gesture of protection and connection that had become second nature. "Baby kicks like Apache warrior," a pony observed with approval. She held up the cradleboard. "Almost finished. We'll keep little one safe when you travel to settlement." Their trips to the Quaker community had become regular occurrences. Sarah and Maka worked as healers there twice each month, combining their knowledge to treat ailments conventional doctors often couldn't help. Word had spread beyond the settlement, bringing visitors from as far as Fort Pierre seeking their unique remedies. Not everyone approved, of course. Some settlers crossed to the other side of the street when they passed. The new commander at the fort had initially viewed their arrangement with suspicion until Captain Howard vouched for them. But for every closed mind, they found others willing to learn, to see beyond boundaries of race and custom. "Letter came," Maka said, pulling a folded paper from his pocket. "From Territorial Governor." Sarah took it with surprise. The governor had taken an interest in their unusual family after hearing of their role in exposing Sergeant Mitchell's corruption. His support had helped quiet those who might otherwise have caused trouble. She read the letter aloud. "In recognition of your valuable contributions to frontier medicine and peaceful relations, the Territory hereby grants you formal title to your lands and extends official protection to all members of your household. What does it mean, Mama? Emma asked, having come inside with Shadow during the reading. It means our home is officially recognized, Sarah explained, and that Maka and Aponi are legally protected as part of our family. Good, Emma said with characteristic directness. They already were anyway, Maka chuckled, ruffling her hair, now adorned with small Apache beads Aponi had woven into her braids. Wise little one. Paper only recognizes what heart already knows. As evening descended, they gathered by the fire, a family created not by blood but by choice and circumstance. Emma fell asleep against Makara's side while he told stories of his people's winter traditions. Aponi added details he had forgotten, preserving knowledge that might otherwise have been lost. Sarah watched them, this unlikely family that had formed from a chance encounter in a snowstorm. She thought of Robert sometimes, especially on quiet nights like this. She liked to think he would have approved of the life she'd built from the ashes of grief. A life with purpose, love, and bridges between worlds he himself had respected. Outside, snow continued to fall, but inside their blended home, the warmth held winter at bay. As Sarah's eyes met Makara's across their sleeping child, she remembered the question that had started everything. A little girl stepping barefoot into the snow, offering impossible warmth to a stranger. You look cold, sir. Want to warm up with my mom? Some questions, it seemed, contained more wisdom than all the careful calculations of adults. Sometimes the simplest offer of human kindness could change not just 3 lives, but perhaps, in their small corner of the frontier, begin to heal divisions that seemed unbridgeable. As the fire crackled and the snow fell, Sarah knew with absolute certainty that none of them would ever truly be left out in the cold again.